Merlin's camera trick. It was a fine day on the island of Sodor, and at Vickerstown Station, Gordon had just arrived with his morning express train. As he was waiting for his passengers to disembark, he noticed the Flying Scotsman at the platform beside him. "Good morning, Gordon," he said happily. "I see you've healed quite well after that great race fiasco." Well, yes, Scotsman," Gordon replied, sounding just a touch embarrassed. "Speaking of special events," Scotsman continued, "I hear that there's to be a gala of sorts on your island tomorrow." "Indeed there is," confirmed Gordon. "Sir Robert is having a celebration of unique engines at his estate at the end of the week. Apparently, Stephen and Glyn are to be a part of it. As am I," Scotsman said proudly. "You?" spluttered Gordon. "Why you? What's so special about you? We're both the same class of engine. Why do you get to go instead of me?" "Sir Robert told me that since I was the first engine to go 100 miles an hour, Scotsman said almost braggadociously. "It would be an honor to have me at his gala. Said it would help attract tourists from across the world." "That's not fair," Gordon whinged. "We've both gone 100. Just because you did it first doesn't make you better." "But it does mean that I didn't lose my dome in the process," Scotsman chuckled. "And besides, which one of us has smoke deflectors and 2 tenders?" "The tenders I understand," Gordon admitted weakly, "but not the deflectors. How can you be expected to see anything to your sides with them out?" Before Scotsman could reply, a whistle sounded out in the distance, and a few minutes later, Merlin pulled into Vickerstown. "Hi-ho, chaps," he said jollily. "Is this the island of Sodor?" "I think you mean island of Sodor," Gordon said dryly. "Yes, that's it," said Merlin. "My, it's such an honor to be on the island where steam is king," he continued, full of energy. "Anyway, I'm Merlin, the experimental prototype King Arthur class stealth engine. And you must be the Flying Scotsman. I must say your speed record is something to be admired." "Why, thank you," replied Scotsman humbly. "Oh, and this is my brother Gordon," Scotsman continued. "We've both managed to reach 100 miles per hour as a matter of fact," Gordon said plainly. "Oh my, how exciting," Merlin replied. "And since we're on the topic of talents, I have a little talent of my own." "Really?" said Gordon doubtfully. "And what's that?" "Using my 3 funnels, I can turn myself invisible," exclaimed Merlin. "Oh," snickered Gordon, trying his hardest not to laugh. "How so, my dear Merlin?" "Just watch," answered Merlin. "Invisibility on!" he called, and steam flew everywhere. In a matter of seconds, all 3 engines were buried in a thick cloud of steam. "Scotsman!" coughed Gordon. "Where are you? I can't see a blasted thing in front of me." "Not even me?" came Merlin's voice. "No, Merlin, not even you," Gordon spluttered. "Huzzah!" cried Merlin as the cloud of steam faded. "Very impressive, isn't it?" "Quite," said Gordon dryly. "Pardon my asking, Merlin, but what are you doing here on Sodor? I wasn't told we would be getting a new engine." "Oh, I'm not a new engine," laughed Merlin. "I'm only here for the steam gala up at some place called Elfstead Castle for a man named Sir Robert Normandy. He said that Thomas told him about me and he would love to see me in person. Anyway, I must be off. Nice meeting you two." "And I'll see you at the gala," Scotsman replied. And with that, Merlin was off. "Even that 3-funneled lunatic gets to be in that gala," grumped Gordon. Merlin soon arrived at Ulfstead Castle, where the Earl of Sodor was eagerly waiting. "Hello there, you must be Merlin. I must say you're even grander than Thomas told me. Such shiny paintwork, and those 3 funnels. You are a very special engine indeed." Merlin felt flattered. "Thank you, sir. I can't wait for this gala to start." "Oh, of course, but there's still one more thing I need you to do before then," said the Earl. "I need you to help me write a short summary about yourself so the visitors know a bit about you beforehand." "Oh, of course, sir," smiled Merlin. "The first thing you should know about me is that I can turn myself invisible." "Invisible?" The Earl was intrigued. "That's right. It's a little trick I can do thanks to my 3 funnels," Merlin explained. "Would you like to see?" "Very well," said the Earl curiously. "Invisibility on!" bellowed Merlin and blew steam everywhere. "See?" called Merlin from within the steam. "Completely invisible." "Quite impressive," said the Earl excitedly. "I'm sure the visitors would love to see that." At last, the day of the gala came. Visitors from across the island and the mainland had flocked to Ulfstead to see some of the most unique and famous engines in the world. While Stephen and Glyn were handling the castle tours, Merlin and Scotsman took it in turns to take visitors on an island-wide tour. Today it was Scotsman's turn, so Merlin was put on display inside the castle. He quite liked the attention he was getting, as no one had ever been interested to see an experimental engine like him. He made sure to pose for every photograph and told stories to all the visitors. Midway through the afternoon, a group of visitors came up to Merlin. All had brochures. They all seemed very interested by the experimental engine's blurb. "The last of the King Arthur class," said one. "Currently works in a steel works," said another. "Surprised his bait is as clean as it is," joked a fat one. "Says here he has the power to become invisible," questioned the last. "That's right," interrupted Merlin. "Using my 3 funnels, I can disappear in an instant. Nobody can see me." "Go on, then," said the portly visitor. "Let's see this invisibility trick of yours." "Oh, I would," smiled Merlin, "but I'm currently out of steam. But I am giving a tour tomorrow, so you can see me in steam then." "Very well, then," said the visitors, and after taking a few pictures, headed back to catch their castle tour. Merlin was excited for the rest of the day and talked to the others long into the night about his tour. "And they're coming back tomorrow to see me in action! Oh, how exciting! I can't wait to show them that I can turn invisible! Do you think I should practice? Oh, but I'm not in steam right now. Maybe I should work on something else." "Merlin, please," Scotsman chuckled. "I understand you're excited, but don't stress too much. You'll only worry yourself more than you have to. Take it from me, I've been doing tours over on the mainland for years now, and there's nothing more important than staying calm and getting a good night's rest." "Very well then, Scotsman," Merlin yawned. "I suppose I could do with a good night's rest." And with that, Merlin closed his eyes and drifted happily to sleep. The next morning, Merlin could hardly contain his excitement. As soon as he had built up enough steam, he raced out of the shed and headed off to collect his coaches. "Are they those open blue ones? Or are they those closed carriages? Which ones are they, driver?" "Easy, Merlin," laughed his driver. "Our coaches are red and they're already at the platform. Besides, we've still got some time before we're due to leave, so let's help get Scotsman into his siding." "Of course," Merlin agreed. "Wouldn't want to keep the world-famous Flying Scotsman locked up in his shed all day. With all his rebuilds, I think he's had enough of that by now." In no time at all, Merlin had helped Scotsman into his siding. "Good luck out there, Merlin," smiled Scotsman. "And remember, stay calm and you'll be fine." But Merlin was far too excited and wasn't really listening. He raced off to his platform, leaving a rather worried Scotsman behind. When Merlin arrived at the platform, he found it was flooded with visitors. There were so many that several of them had to stand by the line side. Just then, Thomas arrived with even more passengers for Merlin. "Well, hello, Thomas," cried Merlin. "Fancy seeing you here at this gala." "Nice to see you too, Merlin," laughed Thomas. "How's the celebrity life treating you?" "Quite well," chuckled Merlin. "I've never had so many people come somewhere just to see me. It does feel rather nice after spending so long hiding away from everything." "That's good to hear," smiled Thomas. "I do hope you have enough coaches for this tour, though. Otherwise, it'll be a tight fit for all the passengers." "I'm sure it'll be fine," reassured Merlin. "And if there isn't enough room, then I might be able to make 2 tours in one day." Thomas chuckled. "Maybe there are more coaches and you've just turned one of them invisible." "Don't be silly, Thomas," Merlin laughed. "A coach that can turn invisible? That's just preposterous." Thomas could only grin in amusement. "Good luck, Merlin," he called as he headed off to turn around. "See you around, Thomas," Merlin called back. Merlin couldn't wait to get going, but there were many passengers, and the guard had a hard time fitting them into Merlin's coaches. After much work and deliberation, the guard had managed to squeeze all the visitors in the coaches, and at last, everything was ready. The guard blew his whistle, and with an excited blow of his own whistle, Merlin steamed off. Merlin sped along the main line faster than he had gone in years, blowing his whistle and racing through stations without a second of hesitation. His passengers were singing his praises, and he even saw several people standing by the line side trying to get some photographs. Perhaps I should show off my signature talent for them, he thought to himself. A train without an engine, that'll be a photo for the ages. Just then he saw a group of photographers standing on the platform at Crosby. Invisibility on! Merlin called, wheeshing steam everywhere just as the cameras flashed. In the blink of an eye, Merlin and all of Crosby were covered in a shower of steam, and all the photographers' pictures were ruined. They were all very cross, and shouted and waved their fists at Merlin as he raced away. Well, they seem pleased to see me, Merlin smiled. They're just so excited to see me in action after all this time. It was quite nice of them to wave, too. Every time Merlin saw a group of photographers on a station platform, he would always go invisible. And every time he did, the photographers' pictures and sometimes their cameras would be ruined. But Merlin was so excited that he didn't notice. At Vickerstown, Gordon and Spencer were waiting to depart with their passenger trains. Spencer was handling the Mainland Express until Scotsman returned from the gala, which didn't settle too well with Gordon. So why are you pulling this train again? He asked, annoyed. Because I was the only engine available, Spencer said plainly. Besides, I'm far more capable of pulling this train than you are. That's not true, spluttered Gordon. I've pulled expresses for years. I'm just as capable as you. And why does your controller never allow you to go to the mainland? Asked Spencer. It's obviously because he doesn't think you can pull a train for a distance so long and so fast. Before Gordon could reply, a whistle sounded out in the distance, and Merlin pulled into the station. Well, hello there, greeted Spencer. I don't believe I've seen you round these parts before. Neither have I, chuckled Merlin. My name's Merlin, and you're sponsor, is it? It's Spencer, the A4 corrected, slightly annoyed. My apologies, replied Merlin. I can only read your nameplate so well, you know. Indeed, chimed in Gordon. What brings you to Vickerstown, Merlin? Is it that tour that Flying Scotsman took yesterday? Yes, it is, smiled Merlin. I'm just stopping here so I can rest and so my passengers can take some pictures of yours truly. How undignified that they're taking pictures of the three-funneled one and not of an engine as grand as me, muttered Gordon to himself. Then, Gordon had an idea. You know what would be a good idea, Merlin? Called Gordon. If you were to get some pictures with me. Really? Asked Merlin. Of course, said Gordon. To be in a picture with me will surely make you more well-known around the world, since I am one of the most important and famous engines on the whole island. Even more than Thomas? Quizzed Merlin. Even more than Thomas, laughed Gordon, much to Spencer's amusement. So Merlin made sure to have the photographers take several pictures of him with Gordon, leaving the big blue engine very satisfied. But before it was time to go, the group of visitors from the previous day appeared. Hello, Merlin, said the first visitor. We were hoping you could show your invisibility trick for us now. Yes, smiled the portly visitor. You are, after all, in full steam. Oh, yes, said Merlin eagerly. But be sure you get your cameras ready, because this will be something you'll want a picture of. So the visitors got their cameras ready and waited for Merlin to pull off his trick. Invisibility on! Merlin's steam seemed to shoot out from all directions, covering the entire half of the station. The visitors, caught off guard, dropped their cameras in the blinding cloud of steam. Even Spencer couldn't see what was happening on the platform. My goodness! He coughed. Where is everyone? Just then, Spencer heard a guard's whistle, but the steam was so thick that he couldn't see any green flag. Regardless, he headed out of the station and towards the junction, heading towards Hero, who was arriving with his goods train. Spencer tried to apply his brakes, but it was too late. Luckily, no one was hurt, and most of his passengers had stayed on the platform during the commotion. When the steam faded, everyone could see the full extent of the damage. So much for being capable, chuckled Gordon. Merlin, however, was horrified. My goodness, he said in shock. What happened? Your steam is what happened, called Spencer angrily. What do you mean? Asked Merlin, sounding slightly offended. Spencer means that your steam caused us to drop our cameras and him to be unable to see his guard's flag, said the now angry portly visitor. Now none of us will have any of our pictures or cameras. Merlin looked back. The platform was now scattered with angry visitors and smashed up cameras. "That's done it, Merlin," said Gordon, sounding a bit upset. "Now no one has any pictures of me or you. Now Scotsman is sure to get more pictures than me." Coughed Spencer. "Oh, pipe down, Spencer," huffed Gordon. "You can still be repaired, but those photos are irreplaceable. Now those poor visitors will have no memory of my excellence." Meanwhile, all the visitors were marching over to the station master's office to complain about their damaged cameras. "So Robert's not going to like this," muttered Gordon as he headed off to turn around, leaving behind a very upset and dejected Merlin. For the rest of the tour, Merlin didn't weesh any steam at all. He didn't race along the line, blow his whistle in stations, and barely said a word to anyone. By the time he returned back to Ulfstead, he was more depressed than ever. "Oh dear, Merlin, what's the matter?" asked Glyn worryingly. And as if by magic, 2 whole coaches of angry visitors drained out onto the station platform and started complaining about what a bad tour it had been. "Forget I asked," said Glyn apologetically. Merlin explained what had happened. "And now Spence is in the works, all the visitors' pictures are ruined, and now no one will ever want to ride with me on a tour again." "That does sound rather terrible," Glyn admitted, "but you're not the only one that's had a terrible tour." "What do you mean?" quizzed Merlin. "One time, back when I was starting here at the estate, Sir Robert had planned a special event where I was to give tours for the new year. It had been a while since I had pulled trains, so on my first tour I coughed up brown water out of my funnel and soaked a whole carriage of passengers. They were so cold and cross that they asked Sir Robert that I be put on permanent display." Merlin chuckled. "And your point is?" "My point is that despite that bad day, I'm still giving tours to hundreds of people daily. Don't let this one time get you down. I promise it won't be held against you. You've got nothing to worry about." Merlin gave a feeble smile, though he still wasn't sure how the Earl would handle the situation. A few hours later, Merlin was resting in his shed when the Earl came up to him, and he didn't look all too happy. "Sir, I know what you're going to say, and I'm really sorry for everything." "Thank you for saying so, Merlin," said the Earl. "But what happened today? All the visitors and even some line-side photographers keep telling me that you deliberately ruined their pictures and broke their cameras." So Merlin explained everything. "So no, sir, it was not a deliberate attempt at sabotage or anything like that. It was just an honest mistake that I made while trying to entertain some visitors." The Earl didn't say anything for a moment, then let out a hearty chuckle. "Oh, my dear Merlin," laughed the Earl, "I know you made an honest mistake, and I'm not going to hold anything against you for it, but you need to understand that there's a time and place for everything. I know you're proud of your invisibility, but you don't need to show it all the time to everyone. Just try and keep it to yourself a bit more, all right?" "Understood, sir," sighed Merlin. With that, the Earl headed back into his office, leaving behind a rather deflated Merlin. "So you had one bad tour," smiled Scotsman. "That's not so bad. I've had many bad tours, and many of them were in other countries. You can imagine what that must have done to my reputation." "Well, you're still in service, so I assume it didn't do much," chuckled Merlin. "Exactly," grinned Scotsman. As he fell asleep, Merlin couldn't help but feel a little bit elated. For the rest of the week, the gala went on like usual. At first, many visitors were hesitant to approach Merlin out of worry for their cameras. But over time, everything went back to normal, and Merlin was being photographed for every minute from every angle. When it was Merlin's turn to handle the tours, he made sure never to go invisible when people were nearby, and always blew his whistle whenever he saw a line-side photographer. The end of the gala came, and Merlin and Scotsman were getting ready to go home. Many visitors were waiting to get one final picture of the 2 engines before they left. "Thank you again for being part of this wonderful event," smiled the Earl. "This was truly an event to remember." "Glad I could be a part of it, sir," grinned Merlin. "I'll certainly remember this gala, you can be sure of that." "Come on, Merlin," called Scotsman. "It's time we went back home." Just then, the portly visitor from earlier came out from the crowd and approached Merlin. "Invisibility on!" he called to the engine. "Invisibility on!" cried another visitor. "Invisibility on!" bellowed a third. Soon the entire crowd of visitors had erupted into a chant for Merlin. The experimental engine was at a loss for words. "I don't know what to say," he whispered to Scotsman. "Oh, I think you do," chuckled Scotsman. Merlin smiled and looked towards the crowd. "Invisibility on!" he hollered as steam flew all around the station. This was met from a chorus of cheers from the crowd of visitors, and this time no one's cameras were damaged. And with that, Merlin and Scotsman headed for home.